I'll talk about the 5 precepts now. And I want to read this directly because I think it's impactful, more impactful than if I just summarize it. It says, the Buddha says, there are these 5 gifts, 5 great gifts: original, long-standing, traditional, ancient, unadulterated. Notice that. He's saying that these things, these 5 precepts, are not something that Buddhism made up. They're not something that he created. They're something that had already existed, most likely in the culture at the time, these kind of things. So this is something that Buddha is saying is ancient. It's unadulterated from the beginning, that are not open to suspicion, will never be open to suspicion, and are unfaulted by knowledgeable contemplatives and Brahmins. Which 5? Panatipata Vedamani Sikapadang Samadhyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from slaying beings. Sikapadang Samadhyami means a training rule to be undertaken. You can see right from the get-go, this is not a commandment. This is not thou shalt not. This is you are taking upon, of your own volition, of your own choice, the training rule to train in following this precept. Doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect in it and that you're never going to break it. It's a training rule that you're taking upon. Adinna dana vedamani sikapadang samadhyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from taking what is not given. Kamesu michachara vedamani sikapadang samadhyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from sexual misconduct. Musavada. Sounds familiar. We did that yesterday. Musavada vedamani sikapadang samadhyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from lying. And the last one, everybody's favorite. Sura merya majja pamadatana vedamani sikapadang samadhyami. I undertake the training rule to abstain from, actually there's 2 types of alcohol mentioned in that, sura and merya, drinks and drugs that cause heedlessness. So that's the 5 precepts. These are the basic sila that somebody who becomes a Buddhist follows. When you officially, quote unquote, become a Buddhist, you take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and then you choose to take on and follow these 5 precepts. And so some of them are pretty simple. Most people are not stealing and killing and all these kind of things. Others, like alcohol, are a little tougher for some people, and people have questions like, what if I only drink a glass of wine at dinner and all these kind of things? Right? Again, it's lots of gray areas. People ask all kinds of questions in these regards. So that's up to you to make that decision. So the Buddha goes on and he talks about these 5 precepts. You give, they're faultless gifts. What are they gifts of? They're gifts of fearlessness. Somebody who follows these 5 precepts, the Buddha says, gives countless beings freedom from what? Freedom from danger, freedom from animosity, freedom from oppression. And not only do you give countless beings this freedom, but you also partake in that freedom. And one of the benefits of metta is that you become dear to human beings and non-human beings. If you think about just interactions with people, you have somebody in your life who follows the 5 precepts, who you trust, who you know they're not going to steal from you, they're not going to lie to you, they're not going to sleep with your spouse, they're not going to try to kill you or your dog or whatever, right? In a world where you have all kinds of greed, hatred, and delusion, and all kinds of, you can't trust anybody. You can trust that person. They have your back. They're not going to stab you in the back. They're not going to throw verbal daggers at you behind your back and all these kind of things. That's that gift of fearlessness. You can fear about all these other people, but I don't have to fear that person. That person's a good person. I can trust them. Right? And if you think about it, that's a wonderful thing to have, that you can even just have one person in your life that you can fully trust. That's a heck of a gift, in my opinion. And so they don't have anything to fear. They don't have to worry about these things, danger, animosity, etc. So again, when you are everything in the Noble Eightfold Path, absolutely everything in the Noble Eightfold Path, when you're following that, you're not only benefiting yourself, you're benefiting everybody else around you. And the Buddha tells us this. As in the Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, the 4th book, number 99, he talks about 4 times of individuals living in the world. There's a person who practices the Dhamma, practices the precepts, the Noble Eightfold Path, for their benefit, but not for the benefit of others. There's a person who practices for the benefit of others, but not for the benefit of themselves. There's the person who practices, probably not the Noble Eightfold Path, neither for themselves or others. And there's the person who practices both for themselves and for others. And it's pretty obvious who the Buddha exalts as the person who's doing it the right way. The person who practices for themselves and for others. There's a wonderful sutta called the Acrobat. And in this sutta, there's this master acrobat and there's his apprentice. I always forget her name. It's a really long Pali name that I haven't gotten yet. But anyway, so the master goes, we will get up on, so apparently they get up on stilts and they do all kinds of acrobatics like on stilts, like 10 feet in the air, these kind of things, these acrobats. And he says, we will get up on the stilts and we will perform our trade, and then we will, you will look after me and I'll look after you, and we'll come down safe and we can enjoy what we earn. But the assistant, she was much smarter than her master, because she says, no, I'll watch after myself, you watch after yourself, and then together we'll be safe, we'll come down and we'll do what we earn. And the Buddha says, just as the assistant says, one who watches after themselves watches after others. One who watches after others watches after themselves. And then the Buddha says, well, how do you watch after yourselves and others? Well, his answer is actually the 4 foundations of mindfulness, what you're going to learn from Bhante Sila, this following the Satipatthana. And in brief, it's living mindfully. When you are living mindfully of your own actions, when you are mindfully following this Noble Eightfold Path and living it, well then you're protecting yourself and you're protecting the other people around you. And the same when you follow these 5 precepts. So, in the end, actually, I'll go a little bit more into 5 precepts is the most basic, the most common thing that a person who is following the Noble Eightfold Path practices. But there's also 8 precepts. And these are what we usually call 8 monastic precepts. You took these precepts when you came here to stay at the monastery for the week. In lay life, it's tradition that during apositas, these are like full moon days, new moon days, it's tradition that laity will take on these 8 precepts and try to do practice more diligently and longer and these kind of things. So it's like once every 2 weeks for a day, you're trying to really double down on your practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. So that's following those 8 precepts. And if you've heard, like Bhante Sila, right, when he quote unquote gave you the precepts when you came here, it's come down in the tradition that the monastic, and even if you can read it, it says, I ask you, Bhante, to give me the precepts. But in all reality, nobody can give you the precepts. A monk can't bless upon you, I bless upon you the 5 precepts, may you, follow the 5 precepts. No. There's something that you have to take on of your own choice in your life. Nobody can give them to you. I can give you the 5 precepts. The next day, you're like, oh, I broke this precept. Now I have to go rush back to the priest so they can, give me the precept again or something like that. No. So when you're in your own life and you screw up, you do 3 things. And the way it works in Buddhism, and especially usually in regard to the monks, but not only the monks, somebody will do a transgression. Somebody will do something stupid, and they'll go to the Buddha and they'll say, I've transgressed. And the Buddha's like, foolish man, yes, you have transgressed. The Buddha's like, you're foolish. It's kind of funny when you read it. But he's like, but, he says, you admit that you've transgressed, and you have made amends in accord with the Dhamma. Making amends in accord with the Dhamma is apologizing, confessing. So the first thing you're doing is that you're acknowledging that you did something wrong, that you broke a precept. The second thing that you're doing is making amends for breaking that precept. And, you can, the only confession in Buddhism is between monks. So you don't have to come and confess to a monk or anything like that, what you did. But if what you did harmed somebody else, do your best to make amends. Apologize to that person. Try to do whatever you can to compensate to that person. And that's making amends in accord with the Dhamma. And then the third thing is strive for future restraint, i.e., try to be better, more wise next time, not do it again. So these 3 things. Actually, Ajahn Brahm kind of took from that, and he does this thing. It's called AFL, acknowledge, forgive, and learn. I think that works just as, it's the same thing, really. It works even easier because you can remember that snazzy 3-letter thing. You're acknowledging that you did something. You're forgiving yourself. You're, apologizing. You're seeking forgiveness. And you're learning from that so you do better next time. And so that's what happens. If you break a precept, don't try to fool yourself that you didn't break the precept. Acknowledge that you did it. Forgive yourself. Realize that you're just a being in samsara trying to do the best that you can. And make a vow, make a determination that from here on in I follow this precept again, and I'm going to do better next time. So every time you do that, you just go through that little cycle, that little thing of acknowledge, forgive, and learn, and move forward. Don't get all, sometimes people really get mired in their own pity and their own, judgment. They're like, oh, I'm so horrible. I'm a really bad Buddhist and all these kind of things. Why did I do that? And people are hitting their head and doing all kinds of silly things, really coming down on themselves. The right way to do it is acknowledge, forgive, learn. To really understand that you are a being in samsara just like all the other beings. Do the practice. Don't get too mired in your failures. But also don't hide from them too. Accept them. Move forward. And so this comes to the end of my 2 days talking to you guys about Sila, talking to you guys about living by virtuous principles. Remember the difference between a rule and a principle. A rule is something that somebody imposes upon you. A principle is something that you take up on yourself. And if you keep that understanding inside, then you can be joyous and joyful that you are trying to live in a restrained and beneficial way, as opposed to feeling like some other outside power is making you do something. Why do I gotta do this, blah, blah, blah. So I wish you much success and benefit